Okay, so here's a asset file manager program I created for an engine I'm working on that's using Ogre as the rendering engine. Ogre gives you a lot of flexibility with modifying your assets, but also has a number of dependencies that it requires. So if I wanted to render a 3D model, it typically would require a mesh, and most of the time, it would require a texture and whatnot. That's like the very basics. So that's 3 different files to render one model. So after you start accumulating a number of models, it gets a bit daunting keeping track of all your assets. So this is a asset manager program I wrote. I can see how many assets I have and what different types they have. Here are all my assets in this tree here, and they're color coded, so I can see quickly what kind of files I have, and I can modify them by simply clicking on them. So here's a rifle I have, and I can set some basic attributes here. If I want to, I can modify the material, and these are all the materials I have saved, and it's actually saved into a database, so it's all saved as a binary file, and helps me keep track of all these files, because if it's all file based or on your hard drive, if it's a file system based, I guess you could say, you can move a file and you could ruin your whole dependency tree here. So this mesh file depends on this material file, and I can modify the material as well. You can see that it requires a JPEG, one file. There it is. You can see what it looks like. And if I was to add this mesh file, it would check to see if this material file was already saved in the database, and if it was, it would allow me to save it. This material file I would not be able to save it in the database unless I had this JPEG. So there's a series of checks that it does. All right, so I can categorize all the different files I have, and it'll say what category it is in this tooltip here. And it allows me to better sort the assets if I needed to. These are the different file extensions that I can save in the database. I can add them if I wanted to, and here's a description of what they are, and it'll tell me, I can say whether this is text or not. If it's binary, I obviously can't modify it in text file or in this text box. But if it's text, it'll allow me to modify this and save it, any changes I have to the database. I can add individual assets if I wanted to, or I can do a bulk load and just select a directory, and it'll add all the files it finds recursively in the directory that fall under these different file extensions. And again, it saves them in an order. So it saves all the images first, for example. Then it'll save my CG files, any kind of script files I have. And then it does material files. And the material files are parsed, and it'll find all the dependencies within the material files, ensures the files are saved in the database, and then if it checks those, if it's validated, then it'll save the material file. Otherwise, it'll output an error saying this file, this JPEG, is required before you can save this material file. So I won't output any of my assets without there being the dependencies are already there. So I don't need to worry about that anymore. Same thing with the mesh. I can't save a mesh unless I have the required material file for it. I can also create profiles, take any kind of asset I have and save it, throw it into this tree here, and it'll automatically save the dependencies for me. And I can create a profile and save it for me. I can also view the existing profiles I have. So for example, here's all my sound files, and I can add or remove these if I wanted to. So I can go to the Archives tab, select any kind of profile that I've created, and I can run this. It'll output all the files, compress them into a zip format, merge any kind of material files I may have. So for example, here's some characters I have. Here's all the assets it requires just to render 3 models. So if I go take a look at what it outputted, here's the compressed file, and here's the merged material file. And merging the material files is very helpful because it allows me to check and ensure that there is no material files with the same name and whatnot. Although when I do upload a material file, it already ensures that there is no material file with the same name. So there's some other validation that goes into saving materials. Generated code just for models I have. Same thing with scripting. These are all specific for my engine, so I don't think it'd be very helpful to go over these. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can better manage your assets. Thank you.